Welcome to another episode of the Writer's Game podcast, where we help you magnify your voice and monetize your message. I'm your host, Kyle King, 7-time published author, CEO, and founder of the Writer's Game. But today, just like any day, is just not about me. It's about the authors, the storytellers, and the professionals that we bring on here to be able to teach you not just methodologies, but also share pieces of their testimony that have helped them get to the place where they're transforming lives, not just here in America, but around the world. The gentleman that we're going to talk to today is absolutely a rock star, industry leader, and understands the science behind learning and development, but also being able to leverage your content, your experiences, both professionally and personally, in a very strategic way so that you can get it in front of people, but also be able to transform them in the process. Treion, how are you feeling?
Doing great, Kyle. Thanks for having me, brother.
Thank you so much. And I am, so excited. I just got back, like we were talking about, from vacation this past week on my son's spring break. And I am excited to crack open your newest book, The Mutant Learner. And as an X-Men fan myself, this is definitely something that, resonates with me. But it talks about how to learn and lead effectively in this digital age. Before we get started and talk about you and your professional background, what motivated you to write such a piece of work, and what is your hope for the readers?
It's a great question, Kyle. So the funny thing is, I've written several books as well, but this book I've been working on for 15 years.
Wow.
I mean, I'm pause for effect, because sometimes people think writing books, I want to write a book, and sometimes it's easy. But other times like this, I would wake up in the middle of the night and have inspiration about a concept, and I would get up and I'd start writing, and it'd be a paragraph, and then the spigot of inspiration would stop. And I think, oh dear, okay, this is a good concept, but it just stopped. And then like a week later, I'd get another inspiration, and I'd write a page and a half. And the thing about it, Kyle, I've been in this learning and development space as a professional and innovator, a strategic consultant in this space. So I know how people like to learn. I know what works and what doesn't work. And so what happened was, about a year ago, I had this thought: go back and look at all the things that you've received inspiration for. And I've tested a lot of these things, well, all of them, over this time period. I've been in the learning and development space for 20 years. And so I've tested these concepts, these principles, these formats, these frameworks, and these ideas. And last year, the thought was, look at all the stuff you've gotten inspiration on and see how it fits together. So I did that, and it came together to what you have, the Rise of the Mutant Learner, the book. And so this is a culmination of a lot of years of testing and trying and thinking, and really trying to find a way to help us crack the code when it comes to how do we work effectively in this digital age with so much noise coming at us. So there's a lot of things in there.
How would you describe the mutant learner? In a few sentences, how would you just describe that person in a detailed way where someone like myself, or even someone new on our channel, could really understand who that person is?
And Kyle, you mentioned earlier the X-Men, and sometimes pop culture has helped us to think differently about the term mutant or mutate. We think of X-Men, we think of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, we think of Deadpool. It just changes the concept. It usually has a weird connotation. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the actual definition of the word mutate, it is to change. It is to adapt. It is to survive. And so when I say it's good to be a mutant learner, immediately when I say those words, adapt, change, survive, transform, all of a sudden you start thinking, yes, I want to be a mutant learner, right? And that's the beauty of it. It is something that we do. I mean, the fact that you are hosting a podcast means you are a mutant learner. So I tell people, in my book, I have these 5 types of learners. 4 of them are mutants, and then one's a zombie. You never want to be a zombie. And as you can imagine, it's someone that has zero purpose in learning anything, right? They just go through the motions each day and they live for entertainment. They live for whatever it is, but they're not learning and growing or contributing to the ecosystem of learning.
That's good.
So hopefully that gives you an idea. It's a good thing.
No, definitely. When you break down these 5 types of learners, I'd be interested in learning the different 5. And then I would love to know potentially what category I would fit in as well through that.
So, I make the point that depends on the day, the job to be done will determine which one of those 4 mutant learners you are. So in my book, Kyle, I'm going to crack it open because it's in the book. I have a pretty cool graphic that you can pull out, and it gives you. There's even a chat bot if you scan the QR code. Are you there, my friend?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. You just went blank. So if you look at the it's on page 22. So this is kind of what it looks like. That's the quadrant. Whoops, there we go. For the different types of learner types. And there's a QR code that you can scan and actually download that. But I make the point that you can either be an initiator, a creator, a learner, a wanderer. It's based on this matrix, right? I believe you're either a passive or a dynamic learner as part of the ecosystem, or you are a consumer of information or a contributor of information. And depending on where you are between those characteristics on the matrix will determine in the moment where you are. There are times, Kyle, when we are learners, but when we truly don't know something. And that's okay to be a mutant learner. And that's the first category. There are times when we are initiators, when we ask the question, hey, I don't know, do you know? And the beautiful thing about the digital space we in is that we can ask, I say in the book, I use the phrase, the community is the new expert. There's no longer just one sage on the stage.
That's good.
One expert or a handful. You can be part of a community of hundreds of experts and have access to them immediately as an initiator. There are times when you want to be a wanderer, when you just like, I'm going to take a breather and just learn about something brand new like Stoicism and read one of Ryan Holiday's books. Now you're wondering, but guess what happens? You're going to come across something and go, man, I love that. And you're going to write that quote down, and then you're going to share that with the world, which makes you a creator. So when you're a wanderer, you share with the world too. You contribute just the quote. But when you say, this is Kyle's take on that quote, and you add to the depth of that concept, now you are a creator in the mutant space. So that gives you a very high level look at the 4 different mutant types.
It's interesting because I talk to professionals all the time. And one of the challenges with talking to professionals, and I think the difference between a professional and an expert is a professional is someone that works within a professional organization or a professional realm, and they base their communication and their output based upon other people's perspectives. Whereas an expert is someone that creates their own perspectives and their own models based upon different experiences. And then you have a visionary leader, which is a hybrid between potentially both of those individuals, where I can pull off of my own experiences and use my own methods and models, and then pull from other people's methods and models. And I think when I'm on this call, I see you as a visionary leader, somebody that has this, wide range of professional experience, but you break down these very customized and cutting edge ways of looking at ourselves and our ability to learn. And you're sharing it in a way that creates connection as well as helps us be motivated to learn how to be different types of people and make it okay for us as well. Where did you learn this methodology of knowledge? And what would be your advice to someone that is motivated by this conversation so that they too can create a framework that inspires and motivates other people?
Wow, that's a deep question, and I love it, Kyle, because thank you for saying I'm a visionary. I feel like I'm a contributor, which if I would put that visionary in there as a contributor, But if you just stayed in that one realm, right, in the one space, and you are always trying to come up with new concepts and ideas yourself, you will eventually become ineffective and no longer be seen as a visionary. That's why I think it's important that you alternate between different places on this mutant learning grid, because you want to keep learning. So to answer your question, it's okay to feel like you are an imposter. And I think the term imposter syndrome has thrown us all for a little bit of a loop, because the term imposter has a negative connotation. But I'm saying let's embrace that. Embrace the fact that we are all imposters, because the truth of it is, I don't know everything about everything. Exactly. I don't know everything about hardly anything, right? But what I do know and have passion around, I want to share and learn more about. So that is the mentality, the methodology is be a continuous learner. And actually, I end my book with this, concept of Kaizen, the Japanese term for continuous improvement, and to always mutate, continue your mutating, because otherwise you won't survive, right? So the concept is it's okay to be and feel like you're an imposter, because you are, so am I. And everyone is. Some people are just better at faking it, right? Some people are just more charismatic at faking it. And you might be really good at one or two things, and you might not necessarily be an imposter there, but you're not good at everything. So it's okay to feel vulnerable and humble about what you know and what you don't know, but make sure you are out there learning from other people. And make sure you're open for new things, and then let the process work within you. Because sometimes you need time to process things. The cognitive mind needs time to process, to be still.
One of the things that you shared in your book, and when we think about processes, is this learning effectiveness framework. I believe it's the CARES model. You have where it talks about the content, the application, the reflection period, and then once you get through those first three steps, you have an evaluation period, and then that allows you obviously to socialize and share. Yeah. Can you talk more about this concept, and when is it important for us to apply this in real time?
Well, first of all, you did a great summary of that. My CARES learning effectiveness framework or model is something that I've been testing a long time. So when I talk about 15 years, components of that I've been testing and figuring out. I have a master's degree in instructional technology and learning sciences. So learning sciences came out of the educational psychology discipline. It's now its own discipline, but I also am a PhD student in the same space. So I say that because I'm deep in this continuous mutant learning process, okay? And what I've realized, I've pulled from some of these names that people will know, like Bloom's taxonomy, right? The different levels of Kirkpatrick, looking at David Merrill's first principles of instructional design. And anyway, some of these phrases people will go, yeah, I remember that kind of. And good stuff. I've built this CARES framework on those principles, but I've built it with the world we live in today in mind, the technology, who the mutant learner is, right? If you have a question, Kyle, what do you typically do? What's the first thing you do if you have a question that you don't have someone to ask around you? What do you do?
I just Google it.
You Google it like everyone else.
Yeah.
And guess what? It's pretty darn accurate.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't give you a full answer, it starts you out on the path that you at least know more than you did 10 seconds ago. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the purpose of the CARES learning effectiveness framework is especially for learning and development professionals. Mm-hmm. So, or individuals that want to take their content, their IP, and share it with the world. So, Kyle, you work in making people rock stars by, getting the content and putting it into a book, right? Mm-hmm. And so what I do is then say, fantastic, we have the content. We have it in a book. How do we then get that effectively into the heads and hearts and the actions of the people that read that book? And so I people call it training, learning experiences, but the CARES framework is the model or framework to use when you build an experience that helps people change behavior, that gets into a new skill proficiency, if that makes sense. You create a learning experience or training with that as a framework.
It's often taught, especially now, post the COVID era, where early entrepreneurs are motivated to this ideology that done is better than perfect, and that you want to push it out. And we live in the day of age where you can push out a product, you can get people to buy into it, and then you go build it later. And for years, I've adopted that mentality. And I believe that years later, as an experienced professional and as an experienced business owner, that I believe that mentality is the wrong theory to abide by, because it doesn't necessarily create, like you said, the learning experience for the participants that are taking advantage of your content that they are engaging with. What would be your advice to someone that is a content creator or is a thought leader, has intellectual property, and wants to share it with the world in a specific time period, but doesn't want to get caught up in this ideology of perfectionism?
Wow, that's a good one. So first of all, I think it's a double-edged sword, like you said. COVID, I call it, because of COVID, a lot of people put digital lipstick on a pig.
That's actually hilarious. I like that.
So here's the sad thing, though. So people threw up whatever they could, literally threw up whatever they could into video format most of the time, right? Wow. Online during COVID. And people bought it. But they bought it because they didn't have another choice. So that led to a false sense of security when it came to online or digital content. So I think we got to be careful, though. What I'm not saying with my CARES Learning Effectiveness framework is that you have to spend a ton of time, a ton of money, or even a ton of brain share on creating something that is overwhelming, right? That's not what this does. The CARES framework actually simplifies the process. It just helps you when you are a curator, when you are an entrepreneur who has content that you want to share with the world. It just helps you to give you a framework to say, okay, for this to be effective, I got to make sure there's content. Okay, people got content, right? I got to make sure I build in opportunities for application in the real world and accountability. Who are they going to be accountable for? Because if you tell someone do something and you say good luck, most people are too busy to change any behavior. It's just a fact. There's lots of research on that. And then, with the R in the framework, if you don't build in opportunities for them to reflect, and you could do that as simply as asking a good question. Wow. And then tell them, write down everything that comes to mind. Now, that's a reflection exercise. So you don't have to complicate this experience. You just have to use the framework to help you think differently about your content and how it can work. Because the truth of it is, you might have the best process in the world and you tell people about it, but if they don't do anything different, it doesn't matter. It's just a great idea. So this framework is meant to take people's great ideas, great processes, and actually have other people change how they live because of it.
That's such a new perspective, though, Treion. I haven't heard it from this perspective, and I think I want to give this room to grow, because oftentimes, in me working in the educational industry for years, when we think about building out curriculums, we talk about that middle point between where a student is and where they're going is the transformative process that student will go through. We've never talked about, though, which is probably one of the challenges in our educational system, is what are the behavioral changes that student has to go through to be able to receive the information so that they digest it in a way where they're able to apply it into real life? What are the attitudes that need to change in the person? What are the mentalities that need to change in the person So what you're communicating, if I'm correct, is learning and development isn't just about feeding information. It's about taking your receiver through a process that changes who they are in totality. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Wow, you said that well. We got to record. I guess it is recorded. I want to capture that. So yes, let me just use an example, okay, to really solidify this idea. I love masterclass. Are you familiar with masterclass?
Yes,
Okay, because they bring on these incredible. You talk about visionaries, right, and experts in their field. They bring them on, Hollywood-esque type video, great lighting. It's flawless, right? They can make anyone look good. They could even make me look good if I was on, right? So here's the thing. If I were to say, okay, fantastic, you are inspired by Steph Curry and how he learned to play basketball and continues to improve his game.
Mm-hmm.
Now what?
Wow.
So masterclass, 10 out of 10 when it comes to content, information sharing. What's missing, and some people will then say, oh, here's an action plan. Like in the L&D industry, we're really good about saying, oh, we built you a 7-week action plan. Here it is. Good luck. And if you apply that, your life's going to change. And that's true. But we don't hold them accountable in any way to a group, a coach, a peer, or anyone. We sometimes give lip service to it, but we don't actually build it in the experience. So think about this. Steph Curry became great at basketball, not because of a one-day basketball training session. Yet we put our leaders through 1, 2, or 3-day training. And now we expect them to be the visionaries that we think they would become. Steph Curry couldn't do it. Concert pianists don't do it. Experts or visionaries in their field do not become that in 1, 2, 3 days fire hose events. It is obvious. When I say this to people, they go, duh. Then I say, then why do we put our salespeople through a 1-day training and now expect their behavior to change and what they do to change? So think about that. So masterclass, 10 out of 10 with content, but I'm giving them low scores with everything else on that framework. If you really want change, now what? What do you do?
So when you think about corporate organizations, nonprofit organizations, educational industry, any organization that is working with people to transform other individuals, everyone has content across the board.
Oh, everyone does.
What would be your piece of advice to these leaders in these spaces that have great content, but no application, no reflection, no accountability, none of the other areas? What would be your piece of advice to those individuals that do continuously invest tens of thousands of dollars in 1 or 2-day fire hose events, but then wonder why there's no real change, lasting change? What would be your advice to those individuals?
So that my whole book's about that. Now, the book is written for the individual mutant learner, but it also has a lot of application for the mutant leader. And I talk about the 10 main barriers to effective learning and some of these things we've been talking about. And one of the barriers is this default mentality, this default mindset, which is, I'm going to go to what I've always done because I'm comfortable in that space.
That's good.
So the first thing I would say to people is, okay, you know that your leaders and learners are busy. They have a day job to do. If you put them in even 1 day and you fire hose them, the return on investment for that is so low. And we all know this. So why not think differently? Let's take a step back. Let's say instead of teaching 10 principles for leaders in 1 day or 2 days, let's do it over 2 months. Let's space the learning, because now we're creating breathing space. 1 hour a week. Virtually. We bring those leaders in. We say, what did you do last week to apply the principle you learned last week? They know they're supposed to do that. It's not a surprise. They come, they are required, they're accountable to share whether they failed at it or whether they won at it. Then you teach them very quickly what the next principle is. Now go back to work, apply that. Those two principles, apply it. This is called space learning, right? But in between that, you can build in reflection. You can build in reinforcement. You can build in example routines. Those are all the R's, right? You can build in experiences that said, this is how some people create this principle and put it into a daily routine. How would you do it? Now go try it and come back and tell us. After 2 months, just 1 hour a week, you will have more change, improved performance, improved engagement, and improved retention overall with those people. And guess what I always do with all my clients? I link everything that we do in this learning space to business results and business metrics. If you can't show how what you are doing in the learning and development space actually changes and improves and benefits the business, I'm talking about bottom line, I'm talking about revenue, I'm talking about all these other criteria. If you can't show that, you will continue to be an afterthought. Like, oh, this get training, this check the box, we need the compliance training. Until you start connecting to the business results, you will not be a player and a decision maker in your company.
That is transformational. And that one piece of advice easily was worth $5,000 right here. My question, though, similar to mutant learners and similar to any process, we have to go through a behavioral change before we're able to adopt these principles. What does a leader need to change behaviorally or from an attitude or mentality perspective so that they can adopt the advice that you just gave?
So first of all, Kyle, I think there's a lot of researchers in the space. If they were listening to this, they would. In L&D, we use the word behavior different than in the behaviorist space. Like, so I just want to be very clear. When we're talking about behavior change, this is different activities. This is doing things differently, but cognitively being aware of it, as opposed to behaviorism, which is more of a reactive thing where you conditioned. So I just want to make sure when we talk about behavior, we're talking about how leaders, in this case, what are some things they could do differently? What are different actions? What are different thought processes? Because this is very much a cognitive process. First of all, allow yourself space to think about this. That the way we've been teaching and instructing for decades has been ineffective. There's a lot of research that's showing this. There's actually Dr. Art Cohen has said, he's used the phrase, and I love this. He says, we are conducting learner fraud as an L&D business or companies because we are selling training that is not getting the promised results and benefits because we're doing it in this fire hose, information heavy. Here's what you need to know. Now you make it happen. It's up to you. The responsibility is yours. In your busy schedule, go and do that. Wow. So leaders have to think, okay, that first of all, they're going to feel overwhelmed at first. And they're going to go, wait, hold on. Everything you've just told me is like different than I've been taught.
Exactly.
And the only reason it's different is we've done it ineffectively. If you go back in time, you look at Confucius and you look at the Greek philosophers, the fact that Socrates taught Plato, right? Was Plato's mentor. The teaching in that space was different. If I was a visionary, an expert, I would have, or master, I would have a handful of students that I would mentor, teach over time to do certain things. So now we try to capture that magic in a bottle, put it in a training course and say, these are the 10 principles of wonderful leaders. And we write a book about it. And then we say, okay, they might be wonderful principles. But if you want to change that, you have to think, how did Confucius change his students? Did they do it with a book and said, now go read it and here's a one-day training? No. The benefit today, though, Kyle, and then I'll stop talking for a second. The benefit today is we have, to help us, we have digital and technology, digital tools and technology to help us create these ongoing and sequential experiences or not necessarily sequential, but we can use technology to enhance our learning experience over time. And that's, if Confucius and Socrates and Plato and Aristotle had this, they would have used it too, but properly. Again, you don't want a fire hose. Here's everything. Here's a shiny new object. Go and try it out. And then it's like, in what context? How should I use it? People still need order and some form of prescription to know how to do things. So I've said a lot there, a lot to unpack.
You know, there is so much that was said there, but so valuable in your delivery and how you communicated for not just the mutant learner, but the mutant leader to be able to take action immediately. So if you're somebody watching this, I definitely want you to take advantage of all of Treion's different offers that he has available for you to take action and transform not only yourself first, but also the organization and the people that you serve. How can people work with you, Treion? You know, where can people find you? And what would someone gain from working with someone like you?
So you can find me in all the usual places. LinkedIn. My name is spelled pretty weird, but it's on the recording there. Treion. I'm originally from South Africa, born and raised, but that's a made-up name. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I also obviously have a website, The Modern Learning Architect. My accent sometimes is a little confusing. There it is. Thank you for sharing. modernlearningarchitect.com. Obviously, my book's available on Amazon. It's also linked from there. But LinkedIn's probably the prime spot because I'm active there, and I love connecting with thought leaders. So here's the thing. To work with me, to look at my website, but what I do is, if you want to get actual business results, return on investment related to your content, if you're an entrepreneur, if you want to actually scale your IP, your content, and get it to the world in a way that actually impacts the world, speak to me. If you're a learning and development professional and you want to create links and connections from your training to actual business results, then talk to me. I do a free discovery session. You can sign up on my website for a discovery session with me to talk about what it is you're trying to do, and then we can talk about next steps.
Treion, you have been phenomenal in your pursuit to transforming the way that we even look at learning and development. And that it's not just a set of actions, it's not just a set of trainings, it's a continuous process to shift, transform, and continue to embody principles that shift our behaviors. And over time, when those behaviors shift, it slowly breaks down the barriers that stand in front of us from this faulty sense of education that we've been adopting and embodying since we were children. So I appreciate you for that. And I'm so excited to become this expert mutant learner, but learn from a mutant leader so that we can continue to collaborate together and transform other people's lives. Guys, I want you to stop right now, go to his website, subscribe, purchase 3 copies of his book, and get ready to transform. Thank you so much, Treion. We are on another episode of the Writer's Game podcast, where we help you magnify your voice and monetize your message. And we'll see you guys next episode.